Providential.
I had just returned from this year of language study in Ukraine, and was looking at what my future might be in missions. And this businessman from Winnipeg called up my mother, actually, who was a teacher at Providence College training English teachers, and said, we need English teachers to go to North Africa, to be a witness, Christians, to be a witness to the Muslims in this way. And of course, I picked up on that right away. I was very interested for many reasons, and started talking with him and trying to work out how we might do this. And it ended up that this last summer, I went to Libya to teach English.
You went to Libya to
Yes.
teach English?
To teach English, yes.
Okay. Had you any, no reservation? I mean, you just felt good about this, or were there some trepidation?
It's interesting. I had no reservations. I was totally sold on the idea. I mean, if we look at the situation in Libya, I mean, the chances of someone going in there, a Christian, the opportunity for a Christian to go in there is basically nil. I mean, I'd mentioned to you before, I went to Urbana 90, a big mission conference in Illinois.
I went to Urbana in 1950.
Okay.
5, I think it was. Okay, but I know what Urbana's all about.
And like I had mentioned, 300 missions there, you know. This is back when I was looking at an area of the world where I'd like to work. Not one of them was able to be working in Libya. One of them had missionaries in Libya a while ago, but they had been kicked out of the country.
So I mean, there was no active missionary activity in Libya, period?
No. Not, period. I mean, and so, you know, when this opportunity came up, and it was interesting because that I had heard this information from them, and then finally this businessman approaches me, I just felt like the Lord was saying, Calvin, you know, look, this is an opportunity that I want you to take. And I immediately just went right into it. And
okay.
My parents now were a little bit, at first, you sure you want to do this? But once they realized that I wanted to do it, they were right behind me. Yeah, so,
okay, so you went to Libya.
Yeah.
Were you alone? Were there others that went?
No, we took, well, there was a team of us that went. A teacher from U of M. We administered what we call the CAN test out there.
Okay.
It's kind of the Canadian version of TOEFL for the university students out there to see their English level. And then there was another teacher from Ontario, a woman who went out with us. We thought it might be better to have a male and a female teacher because of the Muslim culture.
So, yeah, the woman to teach the females and the male to teach the males.
It didn't exactly work out that way, but that was the general idea.
Okay.
Yeah. But, so we went out there as a small team, and the teacher from U of M, University of Manitoba, went back after 2 weeks, and it was just the two of us.
So just the two of you were there?
We're out there
for how long?
For 5.5 months.
Okay, now what kind of an environment, or what kind of, where did you go? Were you in Tripoli? Like, Tripoli is the major city, if I'm not mistaken.
No, we took a boat from Malta to Tripoli, but then we took a car down 10 hours south of Tripoli, and right into the heart of the Sahara.
You were in the desert?
Yes, you can't get more desert. I mean, it's about, 400-meter high sand dunes, you know, I mean, 400 feet, sorry. You know, it's what you picture, any of the movies, any of the National Geographics you read about Sahara, we were there. So.
Okay, and the community we're in was in the midst of the Sahara?
Yes, nomadic type culture, which had just recently been moved into the city due to the new governmental structures that were being...
So are they gathering the nomadic people into villages or into communities? And
the government is trying to industrialize the country. Well, I don't know if industrialize is the word, to bring it into the modern world. And so they're giving nomads homes, giving them jobs, trying to bring them into the centers of cultural centers.
Okay. So that there can be an influence in their lives, they can be a productive from a world perspective.
Yeah. I mean, in the last 30 years, they've become a producing country, producing a lot. Well, I mean, they have one of the best oil-producing areas in the world in their country. So, and they've been able to bring the country up to par to a lot of the other Arabic northern African countries.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Now, so was in that setting? Were you in a high school or in a university? What kind of
institute? A university-affiliated institute, technological institute that taught languages and computers. And we went there to open up the new English department. We were just starting. And we set up curriculum, set up administrative structure, set up everything that it took to start an English department. So that was our focus.
Now, and that was your work. I mean, you and you put your time in, and you did you worked effectively.
Yeah. That was what I went over there for.
Okay. Now, and you went as a teacher. You went to train up to do this work administratively and the whole thing. Yeah. Now, as a Christian, what was your part? How did you feel you could express yourself as a Christian in that country? Because it is a very so do I say fundamental
Sure. You could
Islamic
say that,
nation?
Yeah. You know, I found it so wonderfully surprising, shall we say. I was expecting a very hostile environment, very opposed to Christianity.
Antagonistic?
Yeah, sure. But I went there, you know, I was expected to be a Christian. If I hadn't been a Christian, they would have judged me on that. So I mean, as a Canadian, as a Westerner, I went in there. They wanted to know everything about my religion, about my faith, I was flooded with questions.
Okay. Do we have a wrong understanding then of people often and their perspective of where we might be as Christians?
I think so. I think so. What we don't understand is their opinion of religion is culture and religion are identical. I mean, they're one and the same. Religion is part of culture.
If you don't understand that, you don't understand the Islamic or the
You don't understand their thinking. I mean, we as North Americans tend to say, okay, I can be Canadian and be Muslim, Buddhist, Christian, or whatever. But for them, a Libyan is Muslim. I mean, that's his faith. That is considered.
That's his culture. That's his faith. That's that's his life.
Exactly. But for me as a Canadian, going over there, I can be whatever I like. I mean, I can be Christian, I obviously can speak about that because it's part of my culture. Just as I would speak about my upbringing or about the way I live. That's
so the fact if someone was a Canadian and went there not expressing a faith in Jesus or Christianity, they would be shocked.
Yes and no. They see Western culture through TV, through different channels that they can find, and consider all Westerners to be Christian, which is a very tragic thing.
Yeah, but so then all Westerners are Christian. Therefore, Christianity is really a
Christianity is a very non-viable religion. I mean, they look at of course, our media, our things that we put out from our North American culture.
So Hollywood is Christian. So anything they see from North America or the Western society is what they say. All of this together, wrapped up, is Christianity.
And this is why they throw it out the door. But you know, when they found out my faith was genuine, I had the same morals as they did.
They were shocked at that.
They couldn't believe it. They were very impressed, obviously. The fact that, hey, Christianity does have some very viable things to say about life. And this is one of the major conversational points that they picked up on. They would always ask me, how come you don't do this and that and that and that? And I would say, well, that is not Christian. That is Western, but that is not Christian. We don't drink, we don't smoke, we don't this and that and that.
Yeah,
and that.
Immorality is not part of our lives.
Immorality is not part of our lifestyle.
No.
We have actually rejected that, just as Islam has done. And that to them was very, very encouraging. They liked to hear that.
So literally a strong faith in Jesus. I mean,
sure.
Like the results of your faith.
Sure.
I mean, actually was a very powerful tool then.
Definitely.
In being able to share who you were as a Christian.
Sure.
I mean, you were not proselytizing. You were out there simply sharing your faith because they asked you what your faith was.
Exactly. And that, in fact, was the genius of it all. I think, if I were to have gone in as a missionary or someone, not that you could, but if I were to have gone in as someone who was a Christian, quote-unquote, worker, I think my ministry would not have been as viable. I would not have been accepted. But here I was a part of the community. I was a teacher. I was a working person in the community, living and just taking part in everyday life, And through that, I was able to share my feelings, my beliefs as part of my culture. So that was a wonderful experience.
We chatted when I first. You came in and we chatted a month or two ago before you went off to the Ukraine and did all those wonderful things out there. But you were saying that actually lifestyles are very different. And that communication or talking is a big part of Islamic culture maybe just leaving it like that.
Well, let's put this way.
And that's probably true and I just not in the Islamic world. We're talking in the non-Western world. Let me
put
it
that way. I was just going to say that. Let's put it this way. Our society is so full of entertainment and comfort and everything. And we fill our lives with a lot of things which take up time. And if you look at the Libyan culture, I mean, there's nothing to do. You finish work, and there's no movie theaters. There's no anything that we would do in a normal time. They just spend time with each other. They gather in the garden of their home, and they may talk till 2 in the morning. And they talk, and they talk, and they talk. And for that, I had evangelism opportunities every day. We may say 5 or 6 hours a day, I would preach, if you want to call it preaching, about what I believe. Because
you were part of a society that likes to share their feelings, their beliefs, their ideology.
Sure. And
in that kind of a setting.
Definitely. Very philosophical.
You see, now this isn't mind blowing. I mean, it's just very encouraging.
I couldn't believe it. For the first 2-3 weeks, I was in shock. I mean, I figured, you know, the first few times that people started talking to me and asking questions about my faith, I was a little bit nervous, you know, feeling out my territory and what can I say? But you know, it boiled down to the fact that if you're on your own time, personally with someone in their home, the sky's the limit.
Because they were opening the doors to you. I mean,
sure.
They were the ones that invited you into their
sure.
setting.
And my religion was not threatening. I was one Christian in a country of 4 million Muslims. And to them, I mean, what could I do to them? I mean, you know.
But you see, they are maybe very more honest and understanding of
Definitely.
things than sometimes we are.
Definitely.
Non-threatened, because if you had the truth, or if it was truthful, they would allow that truth to then impact their lives.
And I had to be gracious. I had to be very gracious, you know,
well,
because the truth.
We should be gracious.
Definitely, the truth did impact their lives. It's funny that you should say that. I resorted a lot to reading the Bible with them. This is something I picked up on after a few months of being there. That, you know, the Bible has a power in itself. My words, you know, I can explain my culture, but when I get to the Christian faith, the Bible is where it comes from. And I started reading from the Bible to them, the verses which explain our faith. And you know. The truth hit them. They would be, you could see it in their faces. They would become silent and think about these things. And by the end of those 5 months, there were people there who literally, I think, they're going to be problems for their Islamic leaders, because, you know, they've got so many questions now that Christianity answers that Islam could never answer.
For them.
The personal questions in life, you know. They are a people who, their religion is very personal in one sense, that it requires a lot of outward show of faith, you know, praying and
they're very careful
very
to do
devout,
that. They're very devout, yes.
But very impersonal in the fact that their God does not commune with them. They are required to give so much to their God, and He doesn't give much back. This is what I picked up on, that they don't receive the spiritual food that we receive as Christians, you know, the daily blessing and the show of love from God, the feeling that indeed we have peace with the world.
The peace of God actually is in part of our lives, the joy of the Lord.
And that is something they've never experienced, you know. And they saw it in me, and they couldn't figure it out. The questions they asked me, you know, they were trying to find that key. What does this guy got?
Okay.
You know?
Okay. Look, hold the thought. Anyway, I just want to let you know that if you would have a sense in your heart that you may be called to working in a missions program like this, as a teacher, as going in a tent-making situation, and it may be that you're called for it, would you get in touch with us, and I can put you in touch with someone that may have a place for you to get involved. In fact, that's one of the reasons we asked Calvin to come on here today, because there are opportunities out there. And I'm not saying we're going to be the answer, but I'm just saying there may be some that we may be able to give you a connection to. But the reality is that, you know, when Cal talks this way about the fact that Jesus fills the needs in our hearts today, and it's that way for every one of us. I want to say right now, Jesus will impart His peace to you. He'll impart His joy, and it comes through Jesus. Our life is in Jesus. That's where it comes. And I want to encourage you, open your life to Jesus Christ. Give room to Him and let Him speak His life in you and through you and touch the world around you. God bless.